The air in the tiny room was stale, thick with the smell of old dampness and cheap cigarettes. Clara sat on the edge of the sagging sofa, clutching a metal savings tin, the sole physical embodiment of her fragile hope. Through the wall, she could hear the drunken laughter of Beatrice, her aunt, and the chatter from some TV show. The girl shook her head, trying to ward off the lingering despair. Her mother, Eleanor's death a few years prior, had taken her last haven of warmth. Moving in with her mother's sister, Beatrice, had been like jumping from the frying pan into the fire. Her aunt's home was a haven of laziness and perpetual poverty. Clara, barely stepping through the door, had turned into an unpaid housekeeper, burdened with every conceivable and inconceivable domestic chore. The trips to the local shop for wine on credit, which Beatrice took from her friend, the shop owner Martha, were especially bitter. Her aunt owed a massive amount, and her only salvation, in her own twisted imagination, was Clara marrying Martha's son, George. Years of persuasion, humiliation, and outright demands to get married and solve the problems had finally broken something inside the girl. That evening, when Beatrice once again launched into her song about being a heavy burden and having a comfortable life with George, Clara exploded. The words burst out of her in a searing torrent of rage and resentment. "I won't be your lifeline. Never." The door slammed, the sound echoing through the squalid apartment. She only returned to pack the bare essentials, a few changes of worn-out clothes, the priceless metal tin where she'd saved every stray penny she could, and most importantly, her father's medals, carefully wrapped in an old scarf. Arthur, a captain who had died a hero years ago somewhere in the south, had left behind only these silent testaments to his bravery. For Clara they weren't just awards, they were talismans, a bastion of honour in a world of dishonour. The money in the savings tin was just enough to rent a tiny room from a quiet old woman on the edge of town and buy enough food to start. Applying to college, a dream her aunt had mocked as a ridiculous whim, was out of the question. Every penny counted now. Finding a job was exhausting. No education, no experience, no connections. The only chance came through a free classifieds newspaper. A cleaner was needed. Not the most prestigious job, but the only available way to survive. In the HR department, they hired her without much fuss. "The turnover is insane," the manager grunted. "Nobody stays. The office hasn't been cleaned in 3 days." The first workday felt like a punch to the gut. As soon as she entered one of the offices, barely touching the floor with her mop, a sharp, venomous scream pierced the air. "Are you smelling this? You can't clean with that. It stinks, like mould and decay. Go rinse it out right now with proper cleaning solution." Towering over her was Veronica, the embodiment of predatory beauty, hair as black as night, sharp cheekbones, dagger eyes under sharply defined eyebrows. She exuded coldness and arrogance. Clara shrunk into herself, trying to be invisible. Passing a row of desks, she heard a low whisper. 2 guys, Kevin and someone else, were sizing her up. "Well, look who's here, Cinderella. Seen her clothes? Yeah, not exactly glamorous, but her figure's not bad, gotta admit. Poor girl." The words reached her in snatches, but Veronica, possessing the phenomenal hearing that nature seemed to grant all mean-spirited women, caught every single one. As soon as Clara disappeared through the corridor door, waves of laughter and fragments of sentences, savouring every detail of her worn-out wardrobe, drifted out of the office. Every day at this job was a test of endurance. Veronica turned her life into hell, turning everyone she could against the cleaner. Only Kevin, the one who had first compared her to Cinderella, would sometimes cast sympathetic glances. One day he waited for her after work. A short, awkward coffee invitation. A few hours of real human interaction. Kevin seemed kind, a simple guy, a fragile sprout of hope. The next day, that sprout was crushed. One of Veronica's cronies approached Clara in the corridor, smiling maliciously. "You naive thing," she hissed. "Kevin belongs to Veronica. They're getting married, and she's going to be department head soon. Don't you know who not to mess with? She'll make your life hell if she finds out about your coffee date." The words pierced her heart. The next morning greeted her with bullying orchestrated with devilish ingenuity. As soon as Clara entered the department, a song started playing, with the refrain, "Hello, second-hand girl." Veronica, with an impassive face, began, seriously, asking what flea market Clara had found such a vintage blouse at, calling her old boots collector's items from a bygone era, and Spanish boots. The team politely snickered, egging on their queen, afraid of incurring her wrath. Kevin stood aside, casting his eyes down. He never spoke to her again, never invited her for coffee. At chance encounters in the corridor, he would look away, his face twisted with guilt and awkwardness. He was disgusted with himself, but the fear of losing his job and his career prospects proved stronger. He chose to become another cog in the bullying machine. Clara wanted to quit that instant, but hunger and her emptying savings tin stopped her. Besides, now she had Leo, a small white fur ball that had somehow slipped into the office and curled up at her feet, hiding the kitten from the malicious Veronica until the end of her shift. Clara took him home. The kind old landlady didn't object. Leo became her only comfort. On the hardest days, when there was almost nothing left to eat, she shared her last bit of milk with him. Payday coincided with the visit of the boss himself, Mr. Thompson, the head of the entire corporate empire. Everyone feared him, except for Veronica, who had somehow managed to worm her way into his confidence. She knew that the former military man valued order and couldn't stand chaos. When the boss dropped by her department, Veronica, feigning unnatural politeness, rushed to meet him. Suddenly, her elbow brushed a cup of leftover coffee on the armrest of a chair. A second later, and a dark puddle spread on the floor. With a quick movement of her foot, Veronica kicked the cup under the desk. With a radiant smile, she approached the boss, greeting him, and then, casting a vengeful look at Clara, who was wiping down the photocopier, added, "It's just the staff we're stuck with. It's anyone's guess who they hire. The new cleaner is completely useless. We're living in a pigsty." She took Mr. Thompson by the arm, led him to her desk, and pointed a finger at the stain, pointedly nodding towards Clara. "Look, see how she cleans. She doesn't even touch my workspace. It's all dust and dirt." Mr. Thompson, an imposing, fit man, with military bearing, frowned. His gaze settled on Clara. "To my office," he barked curtly, and there was nothing kind in that tone. "Now!" In the boss's spacious, austere office, Clara stood feeling tiny. "Why is the office such a mess? Why aren't you doing your job?" The voice was dry. Clara, despite her fear, composed herself. "It was clean. I don't know where the stain came from. It's just, they don't like me here. Veronica is always finding fault. Maybe she even did it herself. She wants you to fire me." The words tumbled out in one breath, desperate but honest. Mr. Thompson thoughtfully tapped a pen on the desk. "Seems like a good girl. Why the animosity? What's your last name?" Clara said her last name, which was quite rare. Hearing it, Mr. Thompson froze. His face changed. "What was your father's name?" he asked with sudden urgency. "Arthur." "He died," Clara answered softly. "In the North Caucasus." The boss interrupted, his voice deeper. "A captain. He was my friend. Sustained a fatal wound, saving my life. Pulled me out from under fire." He fell silent, lost in thought. Clara didn't breathe. Silence hung in the air, heavy, significant. "Well, I'll be," the boss finally said, looking at her with completely different eyes now. "So, Veronica has been making things difficult. We'll sort this out. You can go back to work for now. I'll have another cleaner hired tomorrow. It's not right for a hero's daughter to be scrubbing floors with a mop. Will you go to school?" Clara shook her head negatively. "My mother? A long time ago. An orphan then. And do you have anywhere to live?" Clara shrugged. "I was living with my aunt. Now I'm renting a room." Mr. Thompson clenched his fist, his knuckles white. "We'll sort this out." That day, Clara flew home, not feeling the ground beneath her feet. Her first paycheck, and such a generous bonus. She ran to the pet store and bought Leo the best cat food and toys. She felt like a real provider, able to feed herself and her cat. And the most incredible thing, the boss fired Veronica the same day. She wasn't in the office anymore. No one would laugh at her clothes, although now she could afford new ones. After feeding Leo, she ran off to the shops. The next day was even more wonderful. An unfamiliar elderly woman was cleaning the floors in the office. In the HR department, they greeted her with unusual deference. A new contract. Now Clara was a client relations operator. In the afternoon, Mr. Thompson arrived. He called her to his office again. He held keys in his hand. "These are the keys to my second apartment," he said, holding them out. "I bought it for future children. But I don't have any yet. You can live there. It's not right for my friend's daughter to be bouncing from one rented room to another." Clara's breath caught in her throat. "Oh! And my cat? Can I bring Leo? I can't go anywhere without him," she blurted out. Mr. Thompson burst out laughing. "Bring an alligator if you want. The apartment has been empty for a long time. You and the cat can make yourselves at home." Gathering her things and Leo, Clara said goodbye to the old landlady and moved. The spacious three-room apartment felt like a palace. Now she didn't walk to work, she flew. Mr. Thompson treated her like family, bought her clothes, equipped the apartment with appliances, and started getting her involved in the company's affairs. The childless former military man saw a successor in her. Aunt Beatrice insisted there was no money for studying, but the boss insisted she enroll in an economics degree. Watching Clara's transformation, her confidence, her new clothes, the management's attitude towards her, Kevin finally plucked up the courage. He told Veronica their relationship was over, which didn't upset her at all. She had long considered him a dead end, and had moved on to the son of her new boss at her new job. Having gained his freedom, Kevin tried to rekindle things with Clara, but she already knew his worth. She refused him curtly, coldly, wondering how she could ever have suffered over him, cried over his cowardice. The cunning opportunist was left with nothing, wanted by neither Veronica nor Clara. One day, buying food for Leo at the pet store, Clara awkwardly swept a can of cat food off the shelf. A quick, strong hand caught it in the air. "You're not cheaping out on your cat, getting good food." A tall, unfamiliar guy nodded approvingly, putting the can back. "I try. I love him," Clara replied, flustered. "I love mine too. He's a Savannah." "What breed is yours?" the guy asked. "Mine's a Russian aristocrat," Clara smiled. "He sneaked into our office. I took him in so some nasty woman wouldn't throw him out the window, and he just stayed. I named him Leo." Within 10 minutes they were chatting like old friends. Liam understood her jokes. Clara liked his openness. Liam discreetly walked her home. They stood by the entrance for a long time, unable to part. They just wanted to keep talking. It was already completely dark. Clara thought it was probably awkward to show such obvious interest on the first meeting, but Liam anticipated her thought. "You know, I didn't want to leave, but I suppose decency requires." It was as if he had read her mind. As she climbed the steps, Clara realised with surprise. So this is it! It turns out it's all true. About sparks, about soulmates, about finding your person. She spent the entire night sleepless, replaying scenes from the novels she'd read, where characters found each other. In the morning, sleep-deprived, she was getting ready for work. For the first time, she didn't want to go. She wanted to run to the pet store, try to find Liam. In their conversation, they had even forgotten to exchange numbers. Imagine her surprise when, stepping out of her entrance, she saw him. He was standing there, in the light of the street lamp. "You know, I couldn't leave, he said, coming closer. "I just ran home to feed Leo, and came back. Watched your window all night." He pointed up at her second-floor windows. "And you weren't sleeping either. I saw your light was on all night. This is fate, you understand. It was predetermined. You're mine, and I'm yours. End of story." Liam pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. If you liked the story, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. It's very important to us.